but if you don't feel comfortable with answering the question, just say so type thing.
I will be as transparent as I can,
Uh-huh.
but again, I don't work for LexusNexus. I don't have anything to do. I can't represent them. I can't speak as to what they are or are not doing.
Right.
I don't choose them.
Right.
I didn't go out and select them as a vendor.
Right.
So my ability to speak to anything about them is
Let me sit down.
very limited.
Let me sit down over here.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be difficult with you. It's just
I
the
do
scope
understand.
of what I can talk about or can't talk about.
I do understand that.
You know.
So let's go ahead and just start with that since we've already
Sure.
discussed some of it. LexusNexus has recently been in the news
Okay.
in regards to collecting data information for vehicles.
Okay.
In those articles, they are collecting data on your GPS location,
Okay.
who owns the vehicle, what kind of vehicle it is,
Okay.
and multiple other things. And this has been in the news nationwide recently.
Okay.
GM announced that they're no longer going to work with LexusNexus in regards to this.
Okay.
But one of the concerns would be, because LexusNexus is involved with the facial recognition, just exactly how much of their database does our law enforcement have access to, and are they able to bypass things such as warrants just by using the LexusNexus database, because it's not the police that are collecting this evidence. So it's kind of a privacy concern more than directly involving the police in this, because what they're in the business of collecting data and selling it.
Okay.
And some of the data they're collecting is being challenged in courts
Okay.
across the world. It isn't just in the United States.
Sure.
There's multiple lawsuits that are happening across the world over their data protection. That they're violating laws
Okay.
of things like the EU privacy legislation, the General Data Protection Regulation, and all that. They have multiple cases going on in China, Europe, and other places. So the privacy issue is where it comes down to when it's a private company and law enforcement is using them.
Okay.
So are they, well, I don't know if you can answer this, but are they allowing access to data that's being collected, such as things through the collection of data from the sales and use of vehicles for like GPS data? If you understand what I'm going with this, for warrants, because they are not law enforcement, but they have this data of where a vehicle has been, and law enforcement has access to their databases through a subscription. So does that therefore bypass a warrant just by buying that information from LexusNexus?
So LexusNexus actually provides a whole host of different software.
They do.
There's all sorts of them. I don't know to which ones in particular you're referring to, but if I'm understanding the question correctly, can we get information from LexusNexus that is not publicly available, as in it's not something that is
No, the information is available for sale. They sell it.
But you're asking specifically if I can get information from LexusNexus
Because you have a subscription
that
to
is
it that allows you to use their facial recognition, and you probably have other subscriptions with them. Does the
outside
police,
of a warrant, so some type of warrant exception is kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry,
So-
can you clarify your
I-
question
yeah, I'm
a
a
little
little-
bit further?
All right. LexusNexus is collecting information on data of people who are driving their cars.
Okay.
They know who they are, what vehicle it is,
Okay.
where they are,
Okay.
when they are. So they have a multiple thing of information at their fingertips.
Okay.
And the police have access to LexusNexus, and therefore the question is do they have access to that information as well? Because they're not clear on who they're selling this information to. And a lot of their information is subscription based.
Sure.
So because they are not law enforcement, they wouldn't be subject to a warrant to provide that information, but they have been known to sell their information to the federal government already, including ICE, if I remember right, is listed in here. You know, but there is a specific listing in here for where or what they were selling it to. But
So let me see if I can just-
do know that the government, or LexusNexus has been selling some information to our government.
So, without knowing exactly again which software you're speaking of,
Mhm.
if I were to, as law enforcement, say I wanted to know GPS location of a particular vehicle,
Mhm.
I don't get that from them, and I have
That
no
you're
way.
not aware of.
Well, I mean, again,
But-
you're kind of you're being a little vague because I don't know what you're talking about as far as software. I'm telling you generally as a whole, if I want to have vehicle location, GPS tracking, things of that nature, I have to get a warrant signed by a judge,
Mhm.
and I'm not using LexusNexus to get that information.
Okay.
Nor do I
Well,
know
I'm
of
saying-
any way, based on what subscriptions we have with LexusNexus,
Mhm.
I am not aware of any way I can do that in a manner that circumvents that warrant. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question? I
You're
don't.
saying that you wouldn't, but that doesn't mean it couldn't happen.
I am not aware of any way that it could happen, where I could circumvent
Well,
the
they're
warrant.
in the business of selling information.
Well, again,
So
John, do you have
Rem-
any questions?
yeah.
on
Remember,
facial
I don't work for
recognition that we can
LexusNexus,
answer?
so
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we get to your questions
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that,
I'm
since
trying
we
to
do
answer the
only
question.
have about 10 more minutes,
yes, we're
or not
getting-
even
we're
about
getting
6
to
more
that.
minutes.
Yeah. All right. New Orleans had an article written to them by Politico, and they were saying that it's wholly ineffective and pretty obviously racist
okay,
for their struggle with racial recognition policing.
okay,
And they had banned it for a period of time,
Mhm.
and then they allowed it finally.
Mhm.
And they did 15 searches in there, and out of those 15 searches, 9 of those searches turned back nothing.
okay,
6 of those did return results.
Mhm.
Out of those 6 results, 3 of them were wrong.
Okay.
That's a 50% hit, just
Okay.
right there.
Mhm.
And you know, we know that you're saying that it does a 97%
Mhm.
roughly on its accuracy,
Mhm.
but New Orleans has already proved that it's quite less than that.
So without knowing what exactly New Orleans did or how they didn't, I can't talk to what they did. I
Right.
don't know what parameters they used to set up to search.
Mm-hmm.
I know the National Institute of Standards and Technology does test all the facial recognition software that's submitted to them,
Right.
including the facial recognition software that we'll be using via LexusNexus,
Mhm.
which is the Rank 1 Computing out of
Mhm.
Denver. It's the SDK 20, stand by, lots of numbers. I believe it's the I want to make sure I'm giving you the right information here. Oh, here we are. 2.4 algorithm. So LexusNexus doesn't facilitate the facial recognition. Rank 1 Computing does. So different company. But through the National Institute of Science and Technology, they have different standards depending on what you're doing and how you're doing it. So
Mhm.
whether you're comparing a single photo to a single photo or a single photo to many photos, there's different criteria as to what that returns on accuracy. So
Right.
when we're talking about inequity in across social or different subpopulations throughout the world, the biggest disparity that came out of that was, sorry, I have it here for you. If I can find it. You'll have to forgive me, I wasn't expecting this today, so this is kind of off the cuff for me. There we go. So we're talking about the Rank 1 SDK version 2.4 ranked 11th worldwide across the 70 subpopulations in the NIST test database. Lowest scoring demographic being West African females aged 69 to 99 years old, and that was a 0.01871% false match rate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a super low rate of comparing. So I have a picture of you, and I compare it to thousands of pictures,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to kick back a selection that it thinks matches.
Mm-hmm.
That 0.01871 is still well below the threshold outlined by the legislation, 22.113.
Mm-hmm.
So that's less than 1%. So without knowing what New Orleans did or how they did it, I don't know that I can comment on
Right.
the numbers that they came out with. We talk about, the NYPD, the largest police department in the nation. Their facial recognition has been in active service since about 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we look at them is because bigger numbers, better data is kind of the idea.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have any documentation of a false match or an arrest based on a false match.
Right. Okay, New Orleans did not have a false arrest
Mm-hmm.
on any of theirs, but this study showed that 50% match was the accuracy at the time.
Okay.
They didn't make a false arrest on this. in New
What
Orleans.
year was that done?
Last year.
Okay. I'm not aware of that. If you can send that to me, I'll take a look at it.
Well, I'll give you this to read.
You can give it to me, or you can.
You can look up the article, the full article.
Okay.
It's in
I'd be
very
more than
well
happy to read it and
on
take a peek at it, see what they're talking about. But I don't know how they did what they did, or how they got to the conclusions that they got to. So I'm hesitant to say.
Right.
eh,
Now, they say in this article,
We
it
have
says,
about like 1 more minute.
much criticism has focused on the technology side of how facial recognition systems work.
mhm.
Once trained to match faces, they compare photos captured from surveillance cameras to an existing database of arrest photos in New Orleans case provided by the state police.
Okay.
Many researchers have warned that facial recognition is technologically biased against black people because it's largely trained on white faces, and that it's ineffective at promoting safety as crime rates tend to remain the same with or without the technology.
Okay.
So they're saying it's not really helping them.
It's
Who
still,
wrote that?
and that's kind of my question
The
is.
Political news story that wrote this. That's why I'm going to give you this to
Yeah,
look it
I'm
up
more than
yourself.
happy to take a peek at it. I've not read
Right.
that one, but again, that's Politico writing an
Yes.
opinion piece, correct?
Yes, but
Okay.
there is facts in there.
But is
And-
it New Orleans Police Department that said it didn't help at all, or is it Politico saying that? Is my question.
They're saying that the city found this.
Okay,
And
so
researchers are saying that.
my
And
my
I'll
2
have
points
to-
of contention to that.
Yeah.
First off, it's not the software making any decisions.
Yes.
The
even,
software
even there,
makes-
it's not the software making
Yeah,
the
it's still an
decisions.
investigator. It's still a person that has to look at this
Right.
and compare it to all other known information about whatever case it is that
Yes.
they're looking
I
at.
understand what the process is for Colorado.
So, but that's what I'm talking about because we're in Colorado, right?
Yes.
So again, New Orleans is great. I don't know how they're doing what they're doing.
The next time we talk, I want to talk about the Colorado Privacy Act,
Okay,
which involves things like collecting this type of data.
sure. So we're not doing anything that's not outside of the Senate Bill 22-113, and it's outlined what we can do and can't do in here.
Mhm.
And so,
Well, this I'm going to leave with you as well.
okay, absolutely.
Because I'll have questions in regards to this because with private companies like LexusNexus being
Mhm.
involved in this, where is this data coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And are people allowed to opt out of this type thing? That not have their face in that database?
So all the data that this particular database that we're using comes from the records management systems of the police departments that contribute to it.
Right, police departments and CBI, I assume.
Yeah, CBI is a contributor, so
But it's LexusNexus software,
mhm.
but they have access to this database. They're in the business of collecting data. What prevents them from taking this data and putting it into their own database?
That might be something you'd have to ask them. Again, I don't work for LexusNexus. I
Well,
don't.
I
I'm
know,
not a
but
computer software
you
engineer
would be
for them.
in contract with LexusNexus, so
I
it would be in your contract.
So,
I was gonna say
Yes.
we do have to wrap up, but I think
Yeah.
it's worth mentioning just off the questions you're asking that the photos that they use to compare with the ones they have are all booking photos.
yes,
I understand.
They're all
Okay.
post-arrest photos.
I do understand that, but that doesn't mean that the person's ever guilty of anything. A lot of people get arrested, found not
Correct,
guilty.
but they are still
But
post-arrest
Colorado,
photos.
but Colorado is collecting these photos and keeping them. So now that they have these photos, and LexusNexus has access to these photos, they are collecting this information as well to
So-
enhance their databases.
Have you attempted to talk with LexusNexus representatives about
No,
this?
I have not, because
I would say that'd probably be your best bet because you're asking me a whole lot of questions about LexusNexus and their practices.
yeah,
I don't have any control
Well,
over
we
what they
know
do or
what
how
their
they do it.
practices are. So,
So yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
mean,
leave these with you
sure.
so that you can
Um,
read up on this. But
And then
the
I
government
printed.
is in the business of doing business with them.
Sure.
So what's why isn't the government thinking, why are we using LexusNexus? And it's like, well, they have the best software, but with them in the business of collecting all this data, what are they doing with all this data? What's
Sure.
happening to people's privacy?
And I think that's a valid question, and I think it's something that I can understand why you're concerned about it.
Mhm.
I
Which
do
is kind of strange for me to be asking this when I'm out there recording in public.
sure,
But
I mean,
there is no privacy in public. But this is different because this is personal information. This is photos. This is biometric data that's
mhm,
being stored by a company that the government is going to use.
sure.
I also printed this for you. It's just how to get to the website where the public feedback form is open
Mhm.
for facial recognition software. So if you haven't gone in there, Commander Wooten's taking all that public feedback into consideration, and our whole action report is on the website as well. So you can really take a deeper look. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to do that yet.
I have not.
Okay, yeah. So that really outlines as an agency why and how we're going
Mhm.
to use it. Should it be
I
moved
went through this
forward?
process with Wheat Ridge earlier.
Okay, yeah. So
So-
you're very familiar.
so-
They just recently
Actually, they're like, we're just telling you that we're going to do this,
Mhm,
and it's open for public comment. But they had already decided to use it.
mhm,
They didn't leave it up to the citizens.
sure.
They said that they asked the citizens, but if I go out there on the street and start
Mhm.
asking citizens, did they ask you
Mhm,
if it was all right to use this? Well, someone say, I didn't have any idea
sure.
that they were going to do this.
Were you able to? You weren't able to make any of our public meetings about this, were you?
No,
I know you
wasn't-
mentioned
I
that-
wasn't aware of the public meetings
Okay.
involving this.
They were advertised.
I must have missed it.
Yeah, they've
I
been
went to the Wheat
advertised.
I went to the Wheat Ridge ones, but
Yeah.
I didn't go to this one.
But
Privacy is the main concern on this one.
sure. If you go to that link,
Mhm.
the accountability report that's been prepared is on there. There's some links on within that document that I've kind of talked about a little bit.
Mhm.
So those are probably worth looking at for you if you'd be interested. And then you can also leave comments and talk about a little bit about your concerns, particularly with the privacy.
Mhm.
And that way it becomes
Part of the public comment.
basically, yeah,
So that it's everybody that's
Mhm.
looking into it on your site
Yep.
can see it. type of
correct.
thing.
Mhm.
Yes. And so that was the point of Kylan setting that up, was
Mhm.
so that those could be memorialized. And
Right.
so that's something that we can have access to at any given time. So
I was surprised that you did it through a Zoom meeting rather than in a meeting type thing where a person can stand up and be,
we did two of them that were in person with me standing in front of an audience.
I missed them.
Yeah, one was at the rec center and one was here at the police department.
I entirely missed them.
Yeah, I did two of
Must
them in
been-
person and then
must been
figured,
busy doing other things.
Yeah,
and was not paying
um,
attention.
That's why we try to make the virtual option as well, because we know that people are busy.
yeah,
so.
sometimes people don't want to come to where we're at, so we
But you
figured-
have Commander Wooten's contact information's on our website as well. So if you come across anything else, I know you said you're going to leave those with him, right? You can always forward that to him. All the feedback goes directly to him as well. And I printed this out for you just so it can take you right to where you need to get all of that. But we are already 7 minutes over, so thanks for coming
this all
in.
with you. There is another article in here, but it's
Yeah.
really hard to read for what it is because of the way it was printed. But
I could also give you
probably-
my business card's got my email on there if it's easier for you to email them to me.
I could send you a link to them.
That works too.
So
As long as you're not sending me to some weird website that's gonna get my internet access revoked.
no, I don't go to weird websites.
Perfect.
So.
You and me either. But yeah, I'll take a look at some of this stuff and kind of
When I do my research, it's usually legal stuff.
make sure
so.
that that's the one that's gonna go off. That's all right.
Yeah, it's some of it's pretty readable, but some of it's not.
Okay.
It has to deal with the criminal court system,
Okay.
with the challenges that you'll be facing with challenges
Sure.
for the use of the facial recognition.
Sure.
And I know Colorado's requiring that they have to tell the defendant if it was used.
Yes.
So that's
So
a big
that's-
difference
Mhm.
where that article, kind of mentions about the challenges, because a lot of people aren't told that it's used.
That's this guy here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So per this Senate bill, that disclosure would have to be made if
Yeah.
that was a part of that case.
Yeah.